Harry's homesickness and Meghan's anxiety about his frequent absences signal that cracks are starting to show? Are they simply coexisting at this point? Or could this be, Dan, the beginning of the end?
Breaking right now, Prince Harry and Meghan increasingly terrified of a Donald Trump victory, which might put their future in the US under serious threat. We know Donald Trump has spoken about mass deportations. Is he now going to be ordering Harry back on a boat to London? Well, the perfect man to speak about all of this, someone who is at the intersection of US politics and royalty, US royal commentator Lee Cohen, who happens to be a big Palm Beach Trump guy. So, Lee, should Harry be worried right now?
Well, greeting, Dan, and thank you so much for having me. I imagine anxiety over President Trump's possible return to the White House could be driving up Harry's therapy bills. With the mess the world finds itself in thanks to the leadership of the Biden and Harris administration, I'm not sure sorting Harry's visa application is the first thing that's on President Trump's mind or is among his priorities, should he be elected next Tuesday. But perhaps for Harry, the specter of Trump's return is a motivator for him exploring property in Portugal.
Yes, because I guess the point is, Lee, it's not necessarily going to be Trump himself who drives this, maybe even just out of the respect that he has for King Charles. However, isn't it about who the judges are? And the judges will soon be appointed again by Trump and will be sympathetic to that position. So the Heritage Foundation continue their battle. And obviously, for people who don't know, this is all about the fact that Harry admitted numerous times to illegal drug use in Spare. And the Heritage Foundation is saying, hang on a moment, did he declare this on his entry forms to enter the US? Because if he did, then there is a serious issue. There has been special treatment given to a member of the royal family.
Well, you're exactly right, Dan. And the Heritage Foundation actually sued the Department of Homeland Security to force the release of Prince Harry's visa records. But then the lawsuit was subsequently terminated in September, and the judge's order was redacted to preserve Harry's privacy. This harkens back to other investigations that we've seen, like the bullying investigation that you and I have discussed before, where things were silenced to protect Harry. The Heritage Foundation has now submitted an application to vacate, and I'm not a lawyer, but basically to vacate the ruling and unseal private correspondence between the Department of Homeland Security and the judge. But Dan, my take on this is that there's a clear lack of transparency regarding Harry's visa application. It hardly even needs to be said. Clearly, the Biden administration is going out of its way to hide something. The fact that the Department of Homeland Security is fighting to keep this information private raises a lot of questions. Is Prince Harry receiving special treatment because of his special status? That all, I believe, is in the interests of the American people to know.
Well, Lee, to me, can we just call this what it is? It stinks of a Biden administration cover-up to protect Harry.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, if Harry didn't properly disclose his past drug use on his visa application, that could certainly be embarrassing at the most mild and potentially very serious. In fact, it leaves the door open to the possibility that he could no longer remain in the United States if the will were there, say, under a new presidential administration. And Dan, the debate over whether Harry's privacy, or privacy, as you would say, should outweigh public interest suggests something is amiss. If he has nothing to hide, why not share the details?
Lee, isn't it fascinating, though? We've had no endorsement, at least thus far, from Meghan Markle of Kamala Harris. Now, does that suggest that actually she has just become so toxic, even in America, over the past 4 years, that while the Biden campaign may have wanted her endorsement, actually now getting an endorsement from Meghan Markle is actually not something you want? It's like being told you can sing really well by Victoria Beckham.
Well, I think, as we know, lots of people, certainly out in Hollywood and even in the philanthropic community, are trying to keep Harry and Meghan at arm's length, like the famous case this past summer of the charity of the Army hero that whose mother did not want Harry's name associated with the charity because Harry was, in her view, too controversial and divisive. And certainly that applies to Meghan as well. So indeed, you may be right, but the Sussexes weren't entirely out of the game in this election cycle. And I believe you and I have talked about this before as well, because their foundation did issue a statement under the aegis of no bias, simply encouraging everyone to get out and vote. But, it's kind of ridiculous because the next week Harry was with the Clintons, addressing the Clinton Foundation and yucking it up with all kinds of left-wing celebrities that are his confreres. So we know where their loyalty lies, notwithstanding that their foundation sent out something under the aegis of being politically non-biased.
Now, Donald Trump's son, Eric Trump, has responded to this Heritage Foundation court case for the first time this week. Obviously, he's not necessarily saying that he does want to go ahead with deportation of Harry, although he is making it very, very clear that the Trump family have not forgotten the interventions from Harry and Meghan. So let's have a look at what he had to say, and I'll get you to react off the back, Lee.
One kind of black sheep that doesn't exactly know where he is, led by, I think, a wife who's pretty unpopular, probably both here and over where you are. And it's actually sad because I do think one of the greatest... one of the most beautiful things in the UK is actually the monarchy and what it stands for and what it symbolizes and this family. And I mean, it's gorgeous. And by the way, the United States loves it. Yeah. Every single time there's a royal event, a positive, weddings, etc., or horrible, right? In terms of maybe somebody passing, it's covered on every station. We love it for some reason. People are fascinated by it. But then you have kind of the saga of people who've just gone off the deep end, and it's actually sad to watch. But I think people can differentiate the two sides. I think they can differentiate this from this, which everybody loves. And so I don't give a damn if he did drugs, if he did what. It means nothing. But I can tell you, my father and our entire family has tremendous respect for the monarchy.
Sad to watch. There was more from Eric Trump, though. He described the Sussexes as the black sheep of the royal family.
Truthfully, I don't give a damn about Prince Harry, and I don't think this country does either. I will say that, my father loved the Queen, and I think the monarchy is like an incredibly beautiful thing. We've known the King forever. In fact, when I was just digging through a photo album not too long ago, and I came across a great picture of him literally with my father. I'm probably 6 years old in the lobby of Mar-a-Lago, in the front entrance of Mar-a-Lago, and it's special. I mean, we've known him forever. The monarchy is a beautiful thing. I think Harry's done a huge detriment to it. He moved to the U.S. I'm not sure how well received he's been over here. He doesn't really exactly know, I don't think, where he is. But if you kind of cast him aside from that family, the family's been incredible.
Wow. I mean, Lee Cohen. I know the language, the delivery was quite muted there. But just think about what he's saying. If you cast Harry away from the royal family, they're great. I mean, there is serious bad blood between the Trumps and the Sussexes.
Well, indeed there is. And quite honestly, Dan, I think if President Trump is successful in his bid on Tuesday, he's unfortunately going to be very busy cleaning up the disasters of the past 4 years with our open border and the influx of millions of illegal immigrants in our borders and the crime in our cities. And I mean, really, we face the same problems that you do on your side of the pond. And it's going to take President Trump to all of his dedication. So I'm not sure that this issue of Harry's visa is going to be the first thing on his mind. But Dan, I mean, the thing that really strikes me about Eric Trump's comment here is, you know, back in 2021, when I started writing critically of the Sussexes as an American, I was a man on an island. I was a lone voice writing that the Sussexes were the villains of our times. And so it's turned out to be, but everyone's jumped on my bandwagon here. Now it seems Meghan, especially, is getting pummeled from all sides in the USA. Just recently, as you know, the Hollywood Reporter's bombshell about the dictator in high heels, Tina Brown's gloves off assassination of Meghan's judgment. Now we have a former president and perhaps soon to be reelected US president, his son, giving his damning assessment of this entitled narcissistic self-promoter who it seems everyone now openly criticizes on both sides of the Atlantic. That is really mind-blowing to me.
It's absolutely fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And look, as you say, of course, it's not going to be one of Trump's top priorities, but at some point, if one of his judges, if this case gets to his desk, I don't know. And also, surely the point is, if you hate everything that American democracy stands for, Prince Harry, if you're so disgusted by the First Amendment, if you're so disgusted by the Second Amendment, you know what you can do, right, Lee? Leave.
Precisely. You can leave. And, you know, as we've seen, Harry has been spending more time on the other side of the pond and not with his mate or his children. So that is also very interesting.
Well, yes, I did want to talk about that, Lee, because there's been some really fascinating developments on that. So firstly, Harry and Meghan's local newspaper, the Montecito Journal, which is considered to be required reading every week for the A-list celebrities that live in the town, now reporting, and there we see it, there we see the report, but let me read it to you, because it was soft, but very telling, I thought. So Meghan Markle visited Girls Inc. of Greater Santa Barbara last week to talk about a new digital wellness program co-founded by the Sussexes Archewell Foundation. It was her second appearance without Harry since her visit to Children's Hospital Los Angeles on October the 5th. As British royal experts continue to speculate, the Riven Rock, now that's the suburb in which they live in Montecito, are going their separate ways as they live increasingly separate lives. Now, that's not a tabloid. I know Radar Online has reported very similar things. I have reported myself about how the marriage is under significant strain. But this is the Montecito Journal, Lee. This is the hometown newspaper. This is what Oprah Winfrey reads. This is what Ellen DeGeneres reads. There's trouble afoot, isn't there? Because also Radar Online has reported the fact that actually in Montecito, Harry is often seen sulking around on his own.
Well, the increasing frequency of solo appearances is really a glaring indicator that the couple might be on some level drifting apart. Harry's NATO address solo last Wednesday, or attending the Well Child Awards alone, while Meghan takes center stage at events like Girls Inc., raises eyebrows. It's hard to ignore the implication of this very jarring shift, Dan, where each partner pursues individual agendas when they were previously joined at the hip.
the two-track approach, they call it, Lee, which is very odd for a couple who claim they were like salt and pepper. They work better together. Not anymore. Certainly not professionally.
Well, and also, like we said just a minute ago, Harry's repeated solo trips back to the UK, Dan, suggest a longing perhaps to reconnect with his roots and perhaps even mend fences with his family. Meanwhile, Meghan appears to be laser focused on her personal brand and career with ventures like American Riviera Orchard, or whatever it's going to have to be called because of copyright issues that she's been running into. And Dan, the whispers of growing tensions described as, I've heard them described as worlds apart, could well be interpreted as a relationship in tatters or turmoil. And Harry's homesickness and Meghan's anxiety about his frequent absences signal that cracks are starting to show. Are they simply coexisting at this point? Or could this be, Dan, the beginning of the end?
Indeed. Well, look, let me share with you some of my original reporting on this, Lee. So this is something that I wrote on my Substack, which is where a lot of my original royal reporting now sits. The Montecito honeymoon is most definitely over. Harry's decision to start reaching out to former friends and advisors is the surest sign yet that he knows his marriage has badly damaged his brand. Professionally, the splits have been growing for some time. Meghan hates Harry's lawfare against the British tabloid newspapers. Harry is increasingly horrified by the reports of Meghan's bullying of staff, both within the royal households and at Archewell in California, finally aware it makes him appear to be a major hypocrite. Money remains a major concern, and it results in genuine stress for the couple. They both desire a billionaire lifestyle, and Meghan has convinced Harry that she can be the main breadwinner, allowing him to focus on his philanthropic pursuits. He has found the lack of delivery and success in Hollywood frustrating and has a bagged work ethic when it comes to knuckling down or creative concepts. And I think when you decode the PR puffery here, what is fundamentally going on is Meghan is admitting she is now just wanting to make money. That's what it's all about. But fundamentally, the marriage, and this is the terminology that I use, Lee, is under significant strain. Harry does enjoy aspects of life in California, especially the weather, the proximity to the beach. But like so many Brits who move stateside, especially to California, he has realized the connections are largely transactional, based on movers and shakers in Hollywood being able to get something out of him. Then you look at the fact that his father hardly returns his calls, his brother ignores him altogether, his cousins feel deeply betrayed, so he feels very isolated. But, and this is, I think, one of the critical points, they will keep working on this arrangement because neither of them has any choice for now. But Harry is angry and miserable, even though the situation is completely his own fault. So that's my take on where things are at, Lee.
Well, I think you said it brilliantly. The thing that's heartening in this is that, perhaps for the first time, Harry, who has been under her thrall, if you will, perhaps that's thawing a bit. And, perhaps 40 is a significant milestone. He's taking stock of his life and where it's going. He sees it's a dead end. It's not a place that he's comfortable, and that he's being controlled and manipulated. And he's in an environment, Hollywood, that in many respects is beneath his pedigree.
Well, it should have been. It should have been. I don't think anymore, but it absolutely should have been. And then, of course, you have the great contrast of what Prince William is doing here in the UK with his campaign against homelessness. Before I show you a little bit of the documentary, I just wanted your take on whether William was offering an olive branch to Harry, because there are these brilliant photos that have been released. Actually, we can take a look at some of them, and it's completely unseen images of the wonderful Princess Diana back in the early 90s, taking her two sons and she did this all the time. You know, she's the opposite of Meghan Markle, isn't she? Or she was the opposite of Meghan Markle. She did all of this stuff all the time. It wasn't photographed by paparazzi or anything like that. It was all private. But William did actually mention Harry, and it was the first time that he had uttered his name in 6 years. Now, look, of course it's connected to the homeless documentary and everything, but did you view it as a olive branch at all?
Well, certainly that's what a lot of other commentators are saying. I'm on the fence about this, Dan. It certainly captures attention that the Prince of Wales mentioned his brother, whom he hasn't said his name in 6 years, and shows pictures. But I wouldn't make too much of this yet, because Harry was obviously a fact of William's childhood. He can't be ignored or airbrushed out. So it makes sense that William would mention him. It would be awkward if he didn't, perhaps more awkward than mentioning him. And, you know, following Meghan around Hollywood has proved unsatisfying on many levels. And Harry is desperate to build bridges with his former life, since it seems his California dreams are being shredded. So I don't know. Some are saying that perhaps the palace is paying attention to that. But I'm not convinced yet. I think it's too early to make a statement that this is actually an olive branch.
There were some lovely moments in this documentary, Lee, including when William was asked whether he has introduced his children to the concept of homelessness in the same way, I guess, that Diana introduced it to him at a young age. Here's how he answered.
When do you feel would be the right time to introduce your own children to homelessness?
I probably am already doing it on the school run. The first few times I thought, do I bring this up, or shall I wait and see if any of them notice? And sure enough, they did. And they were sort of in silence after I'd said what was going on. I could see the brain going like this, and they're trying to work out what that means. And I do think it's really important that you start those conversations when the children are small, so that they understand the world around them and they're not just living, you know, in their own little worlds.
And the thing about William Lee is he is a very hands-on parent. I mean, it was interesting to me there that he mentioned the school run, because the school run is a huge part of his day, and he makes it absolutely clear to the courtiers that he will be dropping the children off at school. He will be picking them up from school, especially recently when Catherine hasn't always been able to because of the cancer treatment that she's undergoing. So I think it's very clear that he wants to instill in them some of the same values that Diana passed down to him. But first, it turns out the key to losing weight and keeping it off is not in carbs or fat or even probiotic-rich foods. No, the end game of having a healthy weight, as well as more energy and a long, healthy life, comes down to a specific switch you can flip in your body to flush out unnecessary calories. Dr. Stephen Gundry is calling this caloric bypass. And by activating this specific process in your body, he has seen thousands of people dramatically improve their health, even at age 50 and beyond. This includes losing weight, getting tons more energy, and returning to the good health that they had in their youth once they simply address this one key to better health. Not only that, this is actually associated with improved digestion, strong feeling joints and muscles, smoother skin, and healthier lives, meaning it could be the key to a happy life. Dr. Stephen Gundry has lost 70 pounds himself using his research and has kept the weight off for over 20 years and counting. His digestive issues are gone, his health is fantastic, and he feels younger and healthier today than he did in his 40s. His video has been watched by over 20 million people to date, and you can watch and learn more about it at thehealthyfat.com/outspoken. It's linked at the bottom of this video on YouTube and Rumble, but he'll teach you exactly how he has kept his weight off for free at thehealthyfat.com/outspoken. Click on the link in the description below the video.
Well, clearly, the Prince of Wales and the Princess of Wales have a really good feel for this, and they understand their role within the constitutional monarchy and their responsibility vis-a-vis the country, the responsibility as parents to their children, and they're raising them right. It's so gratifying to see a wholesome family, and it unfortunately stands in such stark contrast to the other family on the California coast, who what are Harry and Meghan exposing Lilibet and Archie to? Jam and dog biscuits, while the Waleses are exposing their children to the most important issues of the day, so that they can in turn represent their people best when their time comes.
Indeed, indeed. Now look, breaking right now, fascinating new report about King Charles and the fact that he hated the loathsome political correctness of most churches. Now, this dates back to 1998, but I find it absolutely fascinating because, my goodness, if he hated political correctness back in 1998, I can only imagine what he thinks of the woke mind virus, which is currently infecting churches. So this has been revealed in the Times of London newspaper in the past few hours. So let me read it to you. His comments made in 1998, while he was Prince of Wales, are likely to be seen as a veiled criticism of the church he was destined to lead upon taking the throne. So this was a letter that he wrote when he was 49 years old. And he said, personally, the older I get, the more I am drawn to the great timeless traditions of the Orthodox Church. They are the only ones that have not been corrupted by loathsome political correctness. Now, obviously, if you think back to what had happened in 1998, the Church of England had changed its laws to allow women to become priests. They hadn't at that point dropped its opposition to the remarriage of divorcees with living ex-spouses. But it's very interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes we view Charles, and certainly on certain issues, which I disagree with him on, for example, climate extremism, we view Charles as being quite woke. But the fact that here he was in 1998 talking about loathsome political correctness, well, we know what political correctness has warped into, Lee. It has warped into wokeness. So is it possible that actually we do have an anti-woke king now on the throne? I certainly hope so.
Well, I'd certainly like to think so. And, certainly from the standpoint, I wrote a piece for Fox News when the king showed, remarkable moral clarity. And when he came out and condemned, the treatment of Hamas, the treatment of Hamas in their gruesome violence in Israel, and he called it what it was when the BBC wouldn't. He called it terrorism. So this is a man who really has a great moral compass. So regarding this story from the Times regarding what he said in the church, I think one thing we have to be mindful of, these comments were made in 1998, and certainly, that's what, 30 years ago. So how do we reconcile that with comments like the king's ambition was going to be the defender of faiths in the plural? Perhaps that's a way of saying, he breaks with some of the directions of the Church of England. I don't know. Or perhaps it's as you pointed out, a tendency toward wokeness and one worldism and all acceptance. It's hard to say. But when I read this story, one thing that did strike me was the king is bound by the Constitution to not interfere in politics. And he's not the head of government, but he is the head of the church. So does is he constitutionally bound in that same way to not make pronouncements on church policy? I don't know. Or as head of the church, because he's head of state, but not head of government on one side, but vis-a-vis the church, he's head of the church. So is it inappropriate for him to weigh in on church matters in the same way it's inappropriate for him to weigh in on government matters? I don't know. Do you have a perspective on that?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's risky. Of course it's risky. And it's particularly risky for Charles in some ways because I think he should be quite happy that the church loosened some of its rules, given it allowed him, as a future monarch, a future head of the Church of England, to marry again. And not just to marry again, Lee, to marry a divorced woman in Camilla. So I'm sort of on the fence, but I do think what the king should be doing is trying to embrace tradition. And so I like the fact that he is, or even though it was a long time ago, slamming loathsome political correctness. Now, can he come to the party and slam wokeness? Because the woke mind virus, meaning I had Ayan Hirsi on the show very recently, and the woke mind virus is designed to destroy the West. That's how serious it is. She thinks the wokery is now the biggest threat facing the Western world. So personally, I would like to see Charles lean into that a bit more, move away from all of the obsession regarding reparations and discussions about slavery and that type of thing, because that's only going to lead in one direction. So I think that's my view on it.
No, I agree with that, but I think there's another dimension too. And the Church of England, of course, is a national church, and Charles has a role as, head of state for that nation. So, on the one hand, could he lend his voice as head of the church to make improvements from the church from the top? Rather than just letting the Archbishop of Canterbury, run free to do whatever he wants.
Yeah, and given the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby is doing an awful job, I think that's not a bad idea. Lee Cohen, so look, okay, so you've got to tell me, you're a big Trump guy. Where are you watching the results come in on Tuesday night?
Well, I've already voted. I voted early, and I was going to be watching at a watch party with a Mar-a-Lago crowd, but I've been asked by two British networks to give commentary in the middle of the night, Dan. I don't know what I'm gonna, I'm gonna have a very fatigued face on, but I will do my best. And we're really praying that everything goes the way. I mean, Dan, can you just imagine a world where Keir Starmer and Kamala Harris are, two of the leading figures? It sends chills.
It doesn't bear thinking about. It doesn't bear thinking about. Well, goodness me, fingers crossed, Lee. And obviously, people will be able to read your work as ever on FoxNews.com, The Sun Online, and The Spectator. And my goodness, we've got a big few days, so I'm fascinated to see your take on it all. But Lee Cohen, thank you so much for being here on Outspoken today. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.